Hello, everyone, and welcome to Southern Caregivers Resource Center's live stream. Today, we are bringing you the topic of thriving caregivers, prioritizing mental health and well-being. The reason we are bringing you this topic today is because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we do want to honor that. We do want to bring attention to that, especially when it comes to family caregivers. Now, my name is Melissa Favela, and I am Southern Caregivers Resource Center community educator, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. Now, I want to encourage you all to be comfortable while you're watching this because we are focusing on mental health and well-being. If you need to drink water, drink water. If you have your coffee with you, that's great. Grab a notebook if you want to take notes. Otherwise, you can just sit back and relax. And because we are talking about well-being, maybe before getting started, we can do maybe just one deep breath so that we can honor our well-being. And now we can go ahead and get started, even that one moment, right? So let's get started with our learning objectives for today. So today, the hope is to understand the importance of mental health and well-being for family caregivers. We will also work on identifying signs that can lead to mental health and well-being issues. Also explore how to address mental health and overall well-being in your life as a family caregiver, as an individual, and also talk a little bit more about the resources that we offer for the community. Next slide, please. All right, so before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit about statistics when it comes to caregivers and mental health. Okay, so these statistics that I'm going to talk about are regarding a sample study. So we know that in the US there are about 48 million caregivers. So we definitely this is just a sample, right? It's a sample of about 1,000 caregivers, but it does highlight some of the aspects of mental health and well-being that family caregivers face. So I am going to go ahead and read them off to you, mention them to you. So out of this sample of 1,000 family caregivers, 1/3 of them felt that being a family caregiver brought on emotional stress, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. 4 out of 10 rarely or never felt relaxed. 56% found it hard to care for their mental health. 41% felt lonely. And it was found that participants aging between 18 and 34 were most likely to suffer from anxiety. And women caregivers reported higher levels of stress than their male counterparts. So again, we know that these are just results reflecting a sample, but it does give us an idea of what is going on when it comes to caregiving and the mental health and the well-being of those family caregivers. Next slide, please. Now, it's not all bad news, right? That was kind of the more cautious side when it comes to statistics and caregiving. But it was also lovely to find that 82% of those family caregivers found that being a caregiver gives them purpose in their life. And 81% reported that it makes them feel good about themselves. So we know that it's not all negative. We know that being a family caregiver is challenging in many aspects. And today we are focusing on mental health. But it is something that also brings a lot of satisfaction. It brings a lot of happiness and enrichment in our lives. So it's not all negative. And again, it's a sample size and it's good to highlight these things. If you're more interested in this study, you can find it through AARP website. Next slide, please. So now that we know a little bit more about the statistics of mental health and family caregivers, let's talk about what is mental health. right? Maybe if somebody were to ask you, hey, Melissa, what is mental health? Would you be able to answer? So it is good to discuss it. It is maybe a definition that encompasses many, many things. So for the sake of today's presentation, we will refer to it as a continuum that varies from person to person. So again, we're keeping it very broad, and you'll see why. Um, Mental health has three main components. We have emotional well-being, we have psychological well-being, social well-being as well. And then you'll see that later on, we'll even add physical well-being. So again, it is a continuum that encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Next slide, please. So why does it matter? Why does mental health matter, right? Well, of course, for many, many reasons, but I did want to highlight two main reasons today. And maybe also because these are not maybe the reasons that really come up the top of our heads when we're thinking about mental health and our mental well-being. So why does it matter? It matters because a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well, and work well, and contribute to their community. So, what this is saying that a state of mental well-being is actually reflected in many areas of our lives, including decision making, working well with other people, and even contributing to our community, right? And again, maybe that's not the first thing that we think about with mental health or well-being. Now, the other aspect that I wanted to highlight of why does it matter is because it is an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and shape the world we live in. So again, when we think about mental health, well-being, it's usually not a big priority, right? We prioritize other things, which is totally okay. But it is important to highlight the impact, the far-reaching impact that mental health and personal well-being causes, not just in our personal lives, but also with the relationships that we build, right? With the people that surround us, and even our communities, right? The world that we live in. We as caregivers can wear many hats, right? Some caregivers have small children. Some caregivers are professionals. Some caregivers are caring for many people. We all have different circumstances. But it is important to realize that we need to pay attention to how we're doing in terms of our mental health, our overall well-being, so that our connections with our communities, with those around us, do not suffer negatively, but instead that they bring enrichment, and that we bring enrichment to them as well. So, of course, mental health and well-being is very meaningful. It matters a lot, but I did want to highlight these two aspects of the topic for today. Next slide, please. So now that we have a little bit of statistics, we have the definition, we highlighted a couple of things of why mental health matters. Now we will go on to how not addressing mental health can lead to caregiver burnout. Maybe this is something that we all have our name for, right? When it comes to caregiver burnout, maybe it's caregiver fatigue, maybe it's it could be physical. It could be physical fatigue if you are a caregiver and you require a lot of physical movement with your caregiving duties or your day-to-day duties, right? Not addressing your mental health can lead to issues with your physical health, right? It could also lead to emotional burnout, right? If we are just focusing on the things that we have to do as a caregiver and not really addressing the emotions that come with these challenges, then of course we may suffer caregiver burnout. The other day I heard, I believe it was somebody saying that there was empathy burnout, right? And I thought that was very interesting because it's so specific, but it applies to caregiving, right? Also, social burnout, right? We know that there are other studies that show that family caregivers are at a higher risk of suffering isolation, right? And if we're not addressing our mental health, we can say, you know what, I don't really want to socialize. I don't have the mental space for it. But it is an important part of being a caregiver, right? Of being an individual, period. So not addressing mental health can definitely cause issues with our social interactions. And then of course psychological, right? I feel like mental health is and psychological burnout is very much related. It goes hand in hand, right? But it is important to address all of these because caregiver burnout is a real thing. And we definitely want to help you as much as we can to not get to the burnout part. So, if we don't address our mental health, if we don't address our well being, of course, we can have issues when it comes to our emotional, physical, psychological, and social health. Next slide, please. So now let's move on to the signs of, or the red flag signs when we're having issues neglecting our mental health, our well being. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about the physical signs or the physical aspect of our mental health. So if we're stressed, if we're feeling stressed with our caregiving duties or with our day-to-day activities, what do some of us end up doing, right? We maybe start hunching our shoulders, we have a stiff neck. Some of us at night, instead of relaxing, we're grinding our teeth, right? Or we're thinking about something that was stressful and we start really clenching our jaw, grinding our teeth. We may have headaches, right? A lot of us, I believe the word would be tension headaches. So these can all be physical manifestations of our mental health status, right? Also, frequent illnesses. Our immune system is affected by our mental health. If we're not addressing our overall well being, then most likely our immune system is also going to suffer. We can be a little bit more prone to frequent illnesses. And of course, that's going to bring about more stress because maybe we're not going to be able to focus on our caregiving duties. Now, also, it could be weight gain or weight loss. We know, again, in studies, we know that caregivers are at a risk for malnutrition. And again, malnutrition can be, eating foods that maybe aren't too nourishing for our body, or maybe not even eating enough, right? So, again, weight gain or weight loss can also be a physical sign that something's going on or we're not addressing something with our mental health, with our overall well-being. So of course, we may all have a stiff neck, we may all have a headache here and there, but if this is something that is ongoing, if this is something that is starting to affect other aspects of your life, then it's time to pay attention and address. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, be alert of physical signs. Next slide, please. Psychological and emotional signs. So these are grouped together because, of course, they're very intertwined. And of course, they, like I said earlier, they go hand in hand with mental health. But we can have signs of depression. And of course, depression signs in themselves can be very, very different. It can depend from person to person, right? But I feel like we can all agree, or the ones that we can relate to the most, that we hear about the most, is people maybe sleeping too much, maybe people having constant feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, maybe neglecting personal hygiene. And of course, these are just a few, but depression can look very different with each individual. So when I say depression as a psychological and emotional sign of a mental health status, of course, it's very case by case, but it is something to consider. Same thing, almost the same thing with anxiety, right? Anxiety can be reflected even in physical form, right? But let's stay with the physical and emotional signs of anxiety, right? It could be restlessness, it could be being unable to sleep, being worried all the time, right? And again, anxiety can be reflected in many different ways depending on the individual. And of course, it can also be a scale, right? Maybe you're feeling a little bit less anxious, maybe other days more anxious. But if you are feeling anxious most of the time, again, we want to see if it's most of the time, we want to address these issues. Also, irritability. Irritability can, again, it can be reflected in different ways, but as we would maybe commonly say, snapping, right? If we receive a comment that we do not agree with, that we do not like, and then we become irritable, right? Earlier, I was thinking about how sometimes we actually end up becoming upset with the person that we're caring for because we're tired, because we're feeling the caregiver burnout. So irritability, unfortunately, is part of that, right? And we may feel more comfortable being irritable or lashing out to those around us, right? So instead of reaching out for help, we're lashing out because we're not addressing something. We may also have impulsiveness. Again, we may all kind of go through this, but if it's staying for longer, if you feel that, I wasn't impulsive and all of a sudden I am, what's going on? What's causing this? It's a sign that, again, we should address something's going on there. Feeling unmotivated or unfocused, being very distracted, even when we're doing things that we do on a regular basis. Maybe we're distracted when we're cooking dinner. Maybe we're distracted when we're driving, right? That could be very dangerous. So feeling unmotivated, unfocused is definitely a sign. And like I said, we can all feel a little tired and unfocused and unmotivated here and there. But if these are feelings that are sticking around, that are staying with you, that you didn't feel before, it's time to address. And of course, a very big one is trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. This is directly related to the psychological and emotional sides, okay? Um, and again, this is something that we see a lot. A lot of the times is we can sleep, but then, maybe we're sleeping a lot. Maybe that is kind of going hand in hand with depression, with anxiety, right? It can be reflected many ways. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just some examples and the examples that really stand out the most so that we can be aware of them. Next slide, please. Continuing with that, right? I mentioned this earlier, right? Those feelings that stay around of dread and hopelessness, thinking, why did this happen to me, right? How am I going to deal with this? And if that is with you most of the time, all of the time, of course, it's going to bring about some mental health issues, some well-being issues, right? Detachment from others, like I was saying, isolation is very real when it comes to caregivers. So it's very important that that we stay connected to our loved ones, whoever they may be. Lack of motivation, decline in productivity, difficulty concentrating, and difficulty remembering things. This is a very big one, and it's there with distraction, with decline in productivity, right? But it's true because we're focusing maybe so much on other areas, but we are not paying attention to ourselves, to the task at hand, maybe, right? Our mind is somewhere else. Then of course we can start having difficulty remembering things. We can start forgetting birthdays of our loved ones. We can start forgetting our doctor's appointments, right? Maybe we remember the person we're caring for, their appointments, but what about our doctor's appointments, our health appointments? So again, things to be aware of. Next slide, please. Social signs. So moving on to social signs, we do see and we hear a lot about poor performance, at work, right? And this can be kind of a mix of things, right? Maybe because we didn't sleep, maybe because we're worried, maybe we're being unproductive. All of these things that we spoke about before, the physical, the emotional, the psychological signs, right, can lead to these social signs that can be reflected at work, right? And of course, work is very important. It could be part of our routine, and having that extra stress of not focusing at work, it could lead to issues, right? So again, very important stuff to figure out to see if we're there, or maybe we don't, we definitely don't want to get there. Also having social withdrawal or isolation. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I cannot stress the importance of the social connections that caregivers need, that caregivers and individuals in general need in their lives, right? So making sure that we're keeping those connections. If our caregiving duties make it difficult for us to go out and socialize, maybe finding ways where we can socialize virtually, right? I think there's a good chance that there are some activities that can be done virtually. So little things like that. Sometimes thinking outside the box. Picking up bad habits, and this can be a lot of things, really, but a lot of times the habits that are picked up and that can be very dangerous can be related to substance abuse, right? It could be tobacco use, it could be alcohol use, it could be other type of drug use, right? So picking up bad habits is something that can be very dangerous. Of course, it's something that we don't want, right? So it is part of a social sign, unfortunately, and that can definitely spiral out of control. So just again, be aware of this. Behaving out of character, right? Just not being ourselves, not being our regular selves, and not having our well-being really be reflected with us, and inability to keep personal or work commitments, right? So being overwhelmed, being stressed, not having a good mental health space will make us feel overwhelmed all of the time. So that'll make it very difficult to keep commitments, right? Maybe we say, yes, yes, I will go with you. We will go out to dinner. I will go to your birthday party. But then the day of, we don't want to. It's very difficult for us to even step out the door. So all of these are social signs. Again, not a comprehensive list, but definitely aspects that we want to keep in mind, that we want to highlight just to be aware. Next slide, please. So what can we do, right? We know the statistics, we know the definition, we know what are some of the risks if we're not addressing our mental health and our well-being. So what can we do? Well, I would suggest initially a very simple phrase is to accept the things that you cannot change, but you can change the way you approach them. So a lot of times when we are having issues with our well-being or mental health is because we're stuck in a mindset, right? Oh, I wish things were different. Oh, why me? Oh, this is very hard. And of course, caregiving is hard. But we do have to do a lot of work to accept that this is the situation, this is what is happening. So how am I going to approach those challenges? What can I do as a family caregiver to, yes, fill my duty of a caregiver, maybe a sibling, a mother, a child, etc., but also, more importantly, how can I approach how I take care of myself, how I take care of my mental health, how I take care of my well-being? Right? So sometimes we do need to pause, and hopefully this is offering you a different perspective, because it is important to take care of our mental health. Next slide, please. Something that I also like to highlight, and hopefully this is becoming more normalized in the world, that self-care is not selfish. I'm going to repeat that. Self-care is not selfish. Here at Southern Caregiver Resource Center, our mission is caring for those who care for others, right? So caring for the caregiver can equal to well-being, right? So this is what we try to do here at SCRC, but this is what we also encourage family caregivers to do, to care for themselves, to take care of themselves, and to understand that taking care of themselves and prioritizing themselves as much as possible is not selfish, right? This is something that we really encourage. Of course, it can be very challenging. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but just accepting the fact that if you take a moment, if you take a few minutes to look outside and drink a cup of coffee before you get into your day, that is not selfish, right? You're giving yourself a moment, you're prioritizing your well-being, right? So this is something that we do encourage as part of our mission here at SCRC. So self-care is not selfish. Next slide, please. So let's move on to more maybe and hopefully more applicable recommendations. So how can I manage caregiver mental health, right? And of course, this will be different for everyone. So the recommendations that I'm going to mention are very broad, they're very general. I do encourage, and we'll talk about this later, I do encourage that, you can always talk to a mental health professional. But let's go on to discuss these suggestions. So set reasonable goals, right? Maybe we all think we're Superman, Superwoman, we can do it all. But maybe that is not reasonable. So it is important to set reasonable goals. Maybe we won't be able to do all our caregiver tasks in one day or even 1 week, right? So how can I set myself up for success instead of failure or feeling like a failure, right? So setting reasonable goals is always a good place to start. Doing this will allow you to mentally feel a bit less heavy, right? So this planning, setting reasonable goals can help with your mental health and well-being. Knowing your limits, right? Kind of going off of that first suggestion. Knowing what we are able or not able to do in a specific time, at a specific day, with a specific person, whatever it may be, right? Knowing our limits will be very important, because what happens, or what can happen if we don't know our limits, is that we can become burned out, right? And we know that there's different types of caregiver burnout. So knowing our limits can help us avoid that as well. Understanding what you're dealing with, right? In the signs that people may have when they're going through mental health struggles or well-being struggles, right? I mentioned some red flags. Then hopefully that'll help you better understand what you're dealing with, right? If I'm not sleeping well, why am I not sleeping well? What's going on? What is causing me to feel anxiety or stress or even depression, right? What am I dealing with? What's going on? And this is a big one. learn to accept your feelings, right? And it's important. I'd like to make a little bit of a distinction here, is that we can all have challenging days, right? We can all feel sad, angry, depending on what the situation is, right? So we can say that we are having a bad day. Hey, you know what? I'm having a really tough day. I'm feeling upset, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to stay upset the whole day or the whole week, right? But honoring and putting a name on the feeling can help, right? Because sometimes it could be the opposite, right? It could be just saying, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm doing great, right? But then we're having all these feelings over here. So either staying with the negative feelings or just wanting to stay with the positive feelings, even though we're not feeling great, it's just learning to accept what we're feeling, right? And it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I'm doing great. I've had a good week, but honestly, today has been really challenging. So today I am feeling pretty stressed out, or today I'm feeling kind of anxious, but I'm working through it, right? So it's okay to say, yes, this is what I'm feeling, but hopefully not staying with that feeling, especially if it's a negative feeling, right? So learning to accept what we're feeling, putting a name on that feeling can really help us identify what's going on in that moment, and also how can we address it, right? Because ignoring the feeling doesn't necessarily help us, right? It could just become bottled up throughout the days, throughout the years. So if we honor the feelings, we can accept them, we can stay with them a little bit, and then we can move on, right? So this is something that takes practice. I think all of these recommendations take practice, but it's good to mention them. Maybe you see something here that you can apply, or that you can continue practicing. Next slide, please. Other practical recommendations: reach out for help and trust someone. So this can be as simple as as asking for help within your caregiving duties or responsibilities, right? So just asking for help, or if that's going to help you with your mental health, right? Or asking someone, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling great. I think I need your help, maybe to just talk some things out, right? If that's going to help your mental state, your mental health state, that is great, right? So having that freedom of approaching someone, whether it be to ask for help so that you can take a break, or asking for help so that you can work through your feelings as well, right? So trusting someone, going to a mental health professional, to a counselor, that could be a wonderful thing to manage your mental health. Also, finding other caregivers, right? If you maybe have say that being a caregiver requires you to think outside the box a lot for a lot of circumstances, right? So being open-minded as to how you can approach things, as to how you can care for yourself, but also being realistic. And this kind of goes back to setting boundaries, right? Knowing your limits. So all of these applications can help. And then, of course, focusing on self-care. I like to ask people, when is the last time you did something for yourself, right? When is the last time, you took 10 minutes for yourself? When you're a caregiver, this can be very challenging, right? But it is important to try and bring it at the forefront. I'm not saying that you'll be able to do self-care 24/7, but if you start thinking about it and have it a little bit more present, maybe that can help with practicing it maybe a little bit more than what you used to. So all of these, again, recommendations to help hopefully manage your mental health. Next slide, please. So taking care of you, right? So what can I do to take care of myself? Well, loving yourself, having that positive self-talk instead of that negative self-talk, giving love to your body, right? Having these positive feelings about your body, about yourself, We've already discussed setting for boundaries or knowing our limits, taking me time. Again, it could be 5 minutes, it could be a whole day, right? It could be a vacation, whatever you're able to do. Taking some me time can be so nourishing for your mental health, for your overall well being. Also, make your health a priority, right? Uh, and this could be your physical health, but as we are talking today, also your mental health, right? So see your doctor, talk to your primary care physician. If you are realizing that you're close to burnout, that you are at caregiver burnout, then why not seek advice of a mental health specialist? Talk to a counselor, right? So all of these things can help you. Seek emotional support. Again, this could be a professional, this could be friends, this could be a partner, other family members, whoever you decide to bring into your emotional support group. Why not? Right? And it could be just a simple as saying, hey, you know what? I'm reaching out through a text. I'm having a tough day. Can you hear me out? Do you have 5 minutes? Can I vent to you? Right? Whatever it may be, having that person or those people that can bring you emotional support and finding balance, right? I like to make the distinction of juggling things, which is not ideal, but we want to find the balance, and balance is not easy, right? If we're trying to stand on one foot, most of us will, will have a tougher time maybe. So finding balance is tough, but it is a practice, right? And it is important to know what we need to address to find balance. And since we are talking about mental health, what brings my mental health balance? How do I feel balanced emotionally, psychologically, right? What helps me in particular, because we're all different. So really personalizing this to you. Next slide, please. So some other tips to try to take care of yourself. Make time. And again, this can look very different depending on what you are able to do, but making time to yourself. We all make time for everyone else, right? At least most of us do. And if we're family caregivers, of course, we make time for the people that we care for or the person that we care for. So why not try to make at least a little bit of time for ourselves? Sing or dance to a song you like, and this can be as simple as giving yourself a little break, right? A song, what is it, 2-3 minutes, dancing a little bit, whatever it is that you might like to do it, right? Even if it's just for a little bit. Also, maybe now that we've had a great exposure of virtual things, maybe do a little 5-minute yoga video, or if you practice some other type of self-care practice like tai chi or breathing exercises, stretching, whatever it may be, giving yourself 5 minutes. Even you can incorporate this into your routine slowly. Maybe you wake up and before you even get to whatever you have to do, you stretch. You give yourself that moment in the morning, right? Or whenever it may be. Also, it could just be as simple as, I've been caregiving all day. It's been tough. I'm tired physically. I'm going to go outside and feel the sun on my face, feel the wind in my face, right? It could be as simple as that. Whatever it is, these small things that bring you joy can really help your mental health, right? So this all goes back to those mental health definitions of why is it important, because it enables us to make better decisions, to create and maintain those connections. So all of these tips to try are to help you with your mental health journey, with your overall well-being, so that you can continue having a mental health status that really enriches your life. Next slide, please. Now, something very important, and I think most family caregivers are familiar with respite. But maybe there is a caregiver that isn't, right? Respite is a break for the caregiver, right? And it's temporary. There are different types of respite service. It could be in home, it could be at an adult care center, a program, or a short term nursing home. But respite is an option that some family caregivers have. Some, it really varies on case by case scenario, but it's definitely something to think about. And also, respite can be, part of the family dynamic. When the family caregiver needs a break, maybe another family member comes in to give that caregiver respite, right? To give them a break. So this is something that can be done with a professional, but also with the caregiver support system, right? It could be a neighbor, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, whoever it might be. Respite is a powerful thing for caregivers to maintain their mental health and overall well-being. Next slide, please. So here we come to the best way to be an effective caregiver is to take care of your mental health and overall well-being. So maybe staying with this phrase a moment and understanding that if you, the caregiver, are doing well, if you are addressing not just your physical health, but also your mental health, right? That you will most likely be a better caregiver, more efficient caregiver. You will be revitalized. You will have energy, right? And maybe even a more positive outlook on caregiving. Like I said in the statistics earlier on, right? Yes, there are a lot of challenges, but we also saw really high percentages of those caregivers feeling fulfilled, right? Feeling like caregiving enriches their lives. So again, it goes both ways, right? So taking care of yourself, your mental health, your overall well-being is very important in your role as a family caregiver. Next slide, please. So now that we know all this information, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what Southern Caregiver Resource Center can offer you as a family caregiver to care for your mental health and overall well-being. We offer evidence-based classes. They are called our Caregiver TLC classes or program. TLC for Thrive, Learn, and Connect. These are free classes that are specific to those family caregivers who are caring for someone who has memory loss, Alzheimer's, or another type of dementia, because we know that these are they can be very long-term caregiving gigs, if you will, right? So the TLC program focuses on empowering caregivers and giving them strategies to cope with stress, right? Stress management, to better manage the person that they're caring for, but also to care for themselves, right? So with these techniques, we hope that caregivers fight back isolation, that they know how to work through maybe a crisis or day-to-day caregiving frustrations. So all of this with the focus of self-care. So again, our TLC program is in English. These sessions are offered in person, or I'm sorry, virtually, and we have different schedules. So if you are interested, I will have the last slide with our information on there. You can reach out to us and see how these classes can help you have maybe more understanding of self-care when you are a family caregiver. Next slide, please. I also want to highlight our program called Empowering Caregivers. These are informative animated videos that can help you gain skills when it comes to, for example, communication strategies for the person that you're caring for, right? How to better handle difficult behaviors. So they're very fun. They're 15-minute short animation videos that give you this information. You can get started at www.caregivingtraining.org, and you can browse, right? We have these in English. We also have them in Spanish available. So you're more than welcome to also check this out to help you gain skills, because communication, right, with someone who maybe has a type of dementia can be challenging. So again, also learning this can help you with your overall well-being. Next slide, please. And I also like to mention that maybe we have some viewers that are interested in becoming a professional caregiver. So people can sign up and take these online trainings to see what it would be like, right? So you can sign up at Caring for Cal, and you might be eligible for an incentive. And I do want to mention that these classes end by the end of the month. So you have the rest of the month to look into this. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Southern Caregiver Resource Center's mission is caring for those who care for others. So right here, you have a really brief snapshot of the services that we offer. We pair up family caregivers with family consultants, which are master level professionals. We have support groups that are led by licensed counselors. We have individual counseling, again, with master level clinicians. We offer legal and financial consultation. We offer a lot of education and training, right? These live streams are part of that. We offer online resources, our TLC and our Calma program. And as I mentioned earlier, we do offer respite. So if you're interested in any of these services, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And again, all of this is with the focus of caring for the caregiver, right? All of our services are for family caregivers. Next slide, please. So when it comes to being a caregiver and trying to empower yourselves with more information, we do have a lot of these things at our iCare portal. So you can find that at our website. We have a podcast that's called Let's Talk Caregiving, where we talk about many aspects regarding caregiving. We also have a Caregiver Corner, which offers a lot of videos with information. We also have these, similar to these videos, family caregiver classes that you can watch at your own time. And you can also sign up to our digital newsletter. This newsletter is special because you can also find tips, information. You can see what's going on with us. If there are any in-person events close to you, or virtual events, whatever you prefer, you can find them very easily in your inbox if you sign up to our digital newsletter. Next slide, please. And of course, you can always have us at the tip of your of your fingers. If you have a smartphone, you can follow us on our social media. We are on Facebook. Maybe this is where you're watching this live stream. We're also on Instagram, where you can see all the different information that we offer regarding family caregivers. Also, for our Spanish-speaking community, we have some lives that we do with family caregivers, where really they just share their experiences as a caregiver. You can also contact us via LinkedIn. We are also in YouTube, which is maybe also where you are watching this live stream. And in YouTube, we have a lot of different videos. And like I mentioned, we have our podcast, Let's Talk Caregiving. It is released monthly. So you can always get that downloaded wherever you listen to your podcast. That's where we are available. And next slide, please. So finally, this is our information. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out and learn more about our services, please do. Our website is www.caregivercenter.org, or you can call us toll free to our 800 number, 800-827-1008. or our regular number, which is 858-268-4432. We will answer the phone. We will answer Monday through Friday from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon. If you call after hours or on a holiday, please leave us a message. We do listen to them and we can get back to you on the next day. So again, if you have any questions, if you are interested in learning more about our TLC program, you can reach out to us and we can help you with that. And I want to thank you all very much for tuning into this live stream. And I want to encourage you to maybe do a scan today of how you're doing with your mental health, your overall well-being, and keep being successful in your caregiving journey. Thank you. Bye.